Hey everybody, I got another video for you. So this dryer here is a Samsung dryer, and what happens is it runs through the cycle just on a normal cycle, normal dry. I put it on high heat and it runs through the whole cycle. When it gets down to 1 minute, it just keeps running and running and running, and it doesn't ever stop. The heat is still on. It's supposed to be in cooling mode at 1 minute, but the heat is still on, it's still running, and it ran for, I don't know, 20 minutes after it was supposed to, and it was still going. So I had to stop it, and I'm going to pull it apart and let's see what's going on with this thing. Okay, so first things first, always unplug the machine from the wall. You can undo your vent, you can move it out to the middle of the room, do whatever you want to do, just whatever makes it easier. You only have to get through the top, the console, and the front panel in order to get to this heater. So you don't have to worry about getting to the back. So don't undo the vent or anything if you don't have to, but definitely unplug it or trip the breaker, whichever is easier. So I've got a lot of videos on tearing apart Samsung dryers. So I'm not going to bother walking through it. I'll just rip it apart. And then by the time we get down to the heater, then we can kind of explain things a little bit more. So let's go. Okay, we made it. So we'll take a look at the heater. I'm going to test something because it's usually a fairly common problem. If the actual element touches the case of the heater, it can cause this issue, and that's usually what it is. So we'll do some measurements and see if that's what's going on. Okay, so we're right down here with the heater. You just got to pull off one of these two wires. It doesn't really matter which one. I guess whichever one wants to come off easier is usually how I do it. So our meter here, I'm just going to put it into ohms just to test resistance of the circuit of the heater. So what I'll do, this thing's got a magnet on it, so I might be able to get it so you guys can see that while I'm doing this. So I'm going to touch it to the top terminal, to the bottom terminal, and we should be getting resistance there, and we're not. So that's kind of worrisome a little bit. So we touch the bottom one here to the case, all of a sudden, well, we're getting 5.9 ohms, which we should be getting nothing. So we'll touch the top one to the case, and we're getting nothing. So this thing is broken on the heater somewhere inside this case, but before it gets back to this terminal here. And I can actually see right here, this terminal is busted off. That's the end of the terminal right there. So we'll pop that heater out of there, and we'll take a look at it. Okay, so it's kind of a little bit of a weird view here, but this is our heater that I just took out. So I'm just going to undo all the screws that hold this case together. Okay, so there'll be a couple tabs like this one right here that we're going to have to bend back over, because when you put this all together, you have to bend those tabs. So I'm just going to grab a screwdriver and maybe bend that guy back over a little bit. So I got that little piece pried back enough that I can get these apart. Watch when you're handling this, maybe use some gloves or something These edges are very sharp on this thing. I cut myself all the time actually on these things. So that is where it burnt up right there. So you can see little pieces of the coil sitting in the bottom of the case here. But yeah, this touched the case right there and blew apart. It almost made it all the way through, but that's why it would have continuously ran, because it actually had a path to ground. It didn't have to go through this terminal. So yeah, that heater needs to be changed. And I think I actually have one of those, so I'll grab it and we can throw it in. Okay, so there was 2 different versions of this heater that you can get. Just gonna move that a little bit more. So there is the insert version, which is the guy that we just pulled out. It's just the heater piece. Or you can buy, depending on your model number, but most cases Samsung dryers, you can buy the whole assembly with the thermostats, the heaters installed already in there, and you can just install this thing. So depending on which way you want to go, it's obviously a little easier to just put the whole assembly in, but it's a little bit cheaper to go with the insert. So what I have done, put that insert in, ran the actual wire leads out of the box, and I've got my first screw back in. It can be kind of a pain to line up everything, because you have to line up both pieces of the case, so the top and bottom, and also the heater inside. So you might have to move the heater inside the case, just going through the inside or the back side, just to move it around. So we'll just run these screws back in. This is the only kind of pain in the butt part, but it's not too bad. So I don't know if you noticed or not, but the thermostats also have 2 screws on them, so you have to undo either the top screws or the bottom screws, one of the 2, to get this whole assembly apart. So we got everything installed in there. So what you want to do is bend this flap down. You can always bend it back, and look inside of there and make sure that that coil isn't touching the case at all. And that coil isn't touching another part of the coil somewhere. You really want to look at it and make sure that that is the case. So in this one, you can move stuff around a little bit. You don't want to touch the coil too much, just because the oils on your hands, they say, can break down the element faster, but I don't think that is actually a thing. So yeah, we're all good. As you can see, it's clear on the left side, right side, bottom and top. Also make sure that the coil inside of here isn't touching the case of the insert, because that can also do things we don't want it to do. So we'll just bend this back up like so, and we'll go back and install it. Okay, so when you put this heater in, make sure it sits in this back properly. Feel all the way around. Make sure it actually goes in, because sometimes it can sit funny, not go in there, and then some of the heat is not actually getting into that heating duct, which it needs to in order to dry the clothes properly. So, oh, I have a screw right here. So this is the only screw on this heater. There's one right in the front here. Some of them have a screw through the top here. Some of them have a screw from underneath. Some just have the one in the front here. Make sure this piece is kind of straight up and down as much as you can possibly get it. And remember to reconnect the wiring. Okay, so sometimes when you put these connectors on, they don't feel as tight as they should be. I don't like that with electrical anything. I like it to be nice and tight. So what I do is I usually squish the fitting just a little bit, not enough to, cause it to not be able to grab onto there or anything like that. Just a little squeeze, and it should be nice and tight. Sometimes these heaters come a little thinner on the spade than they're supposed to, so that one's nice and tight. Okay, so I'm gonna put it back together and we'll be able to test it. Okay, so I got it all back together. We'll give it a test and make sure that it actually goes past that 1 minute. So I'll catch you guys in about 40 minutes and we'll see. Okay, so I just ran the dryer. I threw some clothes in it. You can see on the screen there, it says end. So it got down to 1 minute and then it, actually finished the cycle. So that's what fixed it, is that heater. More than likely, if yours is doing that, it's the heater being the issue too. So yeah, there you go. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day.